Today I'm talking to David Ditchfield. Really, I can't wait to chat. I did an interview recently with Jeff Mara, and I talked about my NDE experience. We had loads of people writing comments about how great it was to hear about this NDE. And then someone on the comment, I read all of the comments and replied to most of them, except the totally insane ones, which you get from time to time. And one said, "Oh, no doubt you know David Ditchfield." And I thought, that's interesting. They assumed that. So I checked David out, and I thought, wow, I would like to know David. He sounds fantastic. So he also had an NDE. He is an author, an artist, and a musician, and has a lot to say about what happened post near-death experience. So I'd love to chat to you today, David, about that. Thank you for joining me.
Fantastic. Thank you for having me on. That's great. That's a lovely intro. Good to know.
So can you speak about what happened with this NDE, when it was, what happened, and just talk us through the story before we get into deeper?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. Well, it happened. I was seeing off a friend in the rail station in Cambridgeshire, and my coat got trapped in the automatic closing doors as I was saying goodbye to her. I was giving her a kiss and a hug, and I just couldn't put it free. And I thought, this isn't looking too good. And I couldn't take it off because it was a very thick sort of quality sheepskin. Anyway, the train started to pull out of the station at great speed. You don't realize how fast they pull out of stations until you're actually attached to the outside, And I lost my footing. I got dragged along the platform. Then I got sucked between the platform edge and the speeding train and went under the wheels. Obviously, at that point, I thought, this is it. I'm going to die. I didn't think I was going to survive this at all. I went
Can I just ask you something here, David?
Yeah, of course.
Was that a long amount of time, that being dragged? Did that feel like time had slowed down?
Totally, yeah. The rail police did a big inquiry, and I said, how long did it take? Because it felt like minutes to me, and they said it was 13 and a half seconds from the point of the train pulling out and me going under, and it felt like minutes. And in fact, in my mind, I got time to think it through. I'd seen this thing on the news a couple of weeks ago where a young child had been thrown from a burning apartment block from the third floor and survived without any injuries. And they put that down to the fact that young infants are relaxed. As we become adults, we tense up. So I thought, right, just relax. I actually had time to think that through, which is bonkers, So that's what I did. I relaxed. And in fact, my friend who I was seeing off ran through the carriage and to see and saw me go under. And he told me later in hospital, he said, "David, I can't believe it, because when you went under," he said, "I know this sounds crazy, but you rolled under so gracefully." And I said, "That is why, But I'm sure that's got a lot to do with saving me from having more catastrophic, severe injuries than what I did, So, yeah. So under I went, and I was tossed around like relentlessly. It was like being sucked into a horrible, dark, violent machine, and I was like thrown from pillar to post. And I eventually hit the ground. I was in between the tracks, and I remember just keeping my head down into the gravel. I thought, it's not over yet. I could get hit by part of the undercarriage, and I didn't do, clearly. Otherwise, I would not be here talking about this with you now. So anyhow, the train left the station, and the paramedics arrived really quick because there was a hospital just around the corner, and they started cutting through my clothes, and they said, "Look, there's a hospital nearby, which is Addenbrooke's Hospital, which is one of the best we've got in the UK." And they said that they will save your life, but it's a 25-minute drive. Can you hang on? I said, "Yeah, let's go." So the siren went on, and we sped down the highway, and we did arrive, and there was a whole team of medics there all waiting for me. And I knew it wasn't all over yet, so because I could hear fear in their voices, I didn't know what they were talking about because it was all science to me, but it didn't sound good. And I knew that my left arm had been cut from the elbow down, so I was losing copious amounts of blood. So yeah, my family arrived, and they got there really quick. So I don't know how that happened. Like, again, time was all really strange and stretched and stuff. But there they were, and my mum was in tears, and I was saying, "Mum, it's all my fault. I bring all the dramas to this family." Because up until that point in my life, I was bringing the dramas to the family, and I was like the real, I was the hazard, as it were, So, well, that's how I felt. Anyway, I probably wasn't. That's just how I felt in my mind. So yeah, and it was at that point that I left my body. I left all the drama of the hospital, the pain and the agony that I was in, and then I suddenly was transported, if you like, taken to another realm, and it was a beautiful, dark, and peaceful place that I arrived in, and but it wasn't like a darkness that was foreboding, or frightening, because I pretty much knew at this point. When I told myself, I thought, this is it. I didn't make it. I'm dead. So this is the other side. This is death, And I didn't fight it or resist it. I mean, I've since looked into, like I'm sure yourself, many other people have had NDEs, and there was lots of stories where people have tried to resist it when they first go into that realm, because they've got too much to live for. They've got kids and things, and I didn't want to die, but after the hell I'd just been through, it was just great to be in this beautiful realm of peace, and all the pain had gone. No more pain. It was just beautiful. So yeah, and I was greeted by these kind of orbs of color that were slowly pulsating all around me, and that made me feel comforted. And I just tried to get my bearings, and I looked, and I realized I was no longer laid on the whole hospital trolley that I was brought in on. I was now laid on a huge granite rock, if you like it, but it was like a sort of slate finish, and it felt remarkably comfortable to lay out on, despite the fact that I realized I was no longer clothed. I was just covered in this blue satin sort of silky sheet, which again made me feel comforted. It was like a comfort blanket, and I laid my head back and closed my eyes, and as I did, I suddenly saw light coming through my eyelids, and my eyes, and I looked up, and there were 3 symmetrical grids of pure white light, very bright, intense white light coming in towards me. And as I looked into those grids, I couldn't take my gaze away, even though in this, on the earth plane, if you like, I would not be able to look into that kind of light because it was so intense. But here I could. In fact, I couldn't stop looking, because I felt there was a healing force coming from that light that was healing, all the physical trauma that my body had just been put through. And so that was a really wonderful sort of sensation. It was almost like a sort of, I could feel it physically going throughout the whole of my body. And then I closed my eyes and bathed in this light, if you like, and I felt the presence of somebody had arrived at the scene. Even if you've got your eyes closed on an afternoon having a siesta, if someone walks in the room, someone's walked in. So I opened my eyes, and there was a person, a beautiful androgynous person, stood at my feet, wearing a simple, just a normal black t-shirt, like similar to what I'm wearing now. Nothing too ethereal, just like this simple black t-shirt, and this pure white sort of blonde hair, I guess, and skin that was radiating light from within. It was just that there was this beautiful light coming from this skin, and I knew this person. I knew this person's face, but I couldn't figure where from. And I said out loud, I said, "I know you. I know you. Where do I know you from?" And this person just smiled at me and didn't say anything back. And but I started to realize that I was gaining information through telepathy, and I was being told that this person was somebody that was there to keep me safe, almost like the guardian to my soul, if you like. So I felt even more comforted at that point. In fact, that was incredibly comforting. Enough that I was able to lay back and just relax. And as time went on, I felt the presence of more people arriving, and so I looked, and either side of me there were 2 female forms. To my right, there was a girl with long brown hair, quite European looking, with again a simple brown dress on. Whereas the girl to my left was more Asian Indian, American Indian, or Brazilian in appearance, and she had like a more traditional sort of outfit on, a very beautiful dress, and they just had their hands like hovering over the contours of my body, and it was almost like the energy coming from their hands was so powerful that it was causing every molecule of my body to vibrate with this energy of love. I just knew that it was love that was coming from their hands, and it was unconditional love, and it was just beautiful. But I felt that they weren't just healing, the physical trauma that I'd been through. I felt they were healing all the emotional traumas that I'd had throughout my whole life. We've all had them. We don't escape them. And like the baggage, as we call it, we all say, that person's carrying a lot of baggage. And I certainly was carrying a lot of baggage up until that point. But I felt it was all being taken off me piece by piece, and they were getting down to the pure essence of my soul, and they were getting down to to me, the pure me. And I'd never experienced that in my life. Well, not since I'd been a small child, maybe. And it was really liberating to feel that and feel complete and be rid of all the guilt and the shame that I'd carried before. So I continued to lay back with my eyes closed, and then I started to think about my family, because obviously they were traumatized in the hospital. As I say, my mother was so upset seeing her son, in such a bad way. And I decided to lift my head over the side of this huge rock, and I edged my way over, and I looked down, hoping to see them, which I didn't actually. But what I did see instead was this awe-inspiring view. It was like this. It was like a massive, awesome waterfall of stars. It was like the size of Victoria Falls or Niagara Falls, but instead of millions of tons of water cascading over the edge, it was billions of sparkling stars, which were just falling over, tipping over, and shooting stars just kind of falling down through the middle. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. I'm not in a small darkened room at all. I'm actually in the universe itself, and I felt part of that universe, or this universe, I should say, And as I looked down, and the more I fixed my gaze, the further I could see from one galaxy into another. I was looking into infinity. I was looking into colors and nebulas. And I just lifted myself over, and I was going, wow, and I just thought, okay, well, I can't see my family now, but me of old would have been feeling, oh my goodness, I can't see them. I would have been feeling terrible and irrational feelings of guilt again. But I just figured that's okay. I'm sure I'll be seeing them here at some point. But if I don't, they're going to be experiences all the wonders that I'm experiencing right now. So that's fine. So I was okay with it all. But I guess the most profound moment of my near-death experience was to happen right at the very end, and that was. And I felt it before I saw it. This energy of love that I was talking of earlier, that was vibrating through my body, was suddenly intensified to a level where I felt this is really strong. And so I lifted my head, and just ahead behind the androgynous being that first greeted me was this huge tunnel of white light that was coming in towards me, and it was coming through the universe. And it was surrounded by all these very powerful flames that were slowly circulating all around the edge. And normally I would have been terrified by something like this, because it was quite sort of like, wow, what is this? But there were no emotions of fear. All I could feel was excitement and bewilderment. I was thinking, what is it again? But messages were starting to come through to me, and I was being told that this is the source of all creation. This is where it all comes from. It's not the image of God that I'd always believed in the textbooks, or on the ceiling of the Vatican in Rome, the guy with the long beard. This was it. This was the source of all creation, coming from this white light. So it was at that point that I just felt filled with so much joy and elation that I suddenly came crashing back into my body, and I was back in the hospital, and all the noise of the hospital was suddenly like switched on. It was so loud, and it was like screaming through my ears, and the pain came rushing through me. And there I was, back on Earth. Yeah.
Wow. Crazy. And when you got back, people always ask me, how long were you out for? And it's not, I'd be interested to hear how you answer that. What would you say?
there's no sense of time. That's one thing I realized when I was there, that time didn't exist. I realized that one thing when I was there, I thought to myself, I'm not concerned about the past and I'm not concerned about the future, because I suddenly realized that what being in the present moment means was there. It's just the present moment that you're in, and the present moment is the most important place to be, because my life was in such a mess before. I was broke. I was about to lose my apartment. I was living in London, and and I was running out of money. I was running out of luck, and so things were pretty bad. So all the time, I was constantly concerned with all the mistakes I'd made in my life before. I was concerned with what was going to happen in the future to me. Whereas there, no, it was just the present moment. So you didn't think about time, and so it was. So there was no sense of like. So I couldn't turn around and say, "Oh yeah, you know what? It lasted, 2 minutes, 20 minutes, 20 hours." There was no sense of that at all, which is great, because you realize that we spend too much time. Sorry, we focus on time too much, don't we? We're led by what we see on our laptops, on our phones, and that's how we're used to working our lives, which is fine, which is great. We need that now, but that's only because we've become accustomed to it. Whereas, like in the animal kingdom, everything it's all according to the laws of the universe. They follow the laws of the universe to guide them to the changes of seasons, migrating and getting up at dawn and closing down at dusk. All those different things that we don't do anymore. We've forgotten all that. So it was really liberating to be in a place where that didn't exist. Yeah.
Did you have any healing when you came back into your body? Was there any healing taking place? Like,
you mean afterwards,
when you came back, from this experience?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I had some spiritual healing, which was really powerful, and that came about purely because when I had my near-death experience, I knew nothing about them. I'd never heard of near-death experiences, and I was non-spiritual. I didn't even think about all these things, so I wanted to find out more about it, and I knew that there was a spiritualist church nearby in where I lived, so where I was recovering, I should say. I was recovering at my sister's house with her family. So I was determined to find. This was in St Ives.
Yes.
Yeah. So this in St Ives in Cambridgeshire. Yeah. So, but we found this little church, and I went in there, and at the end of the service, they turned around and said, "Look, you look pretty banged up there. I got all this stuff attached to my arm, all this plastic holding me together, and they said, we do spiritual healing. Would you be interested?" I said, "Yeah, totally." So I went for spiritual healing, and that was great because I was going back into hospital 3 times a week, and I was seeing my consultants, and he turned around and said, "David, do you know what? You're recovering at an incredible rate. You're doing so well. We don't get it." And I said, "Oh, it's because I'm getting spiritual healing." And of course, he's a scientist, and a scientist went, "Oh, okay, all right, that's too much information." But he's a lovely guy, actually. So
they just did not want to know.
No, that's it.
Same with the doctors. Yeah, they just didn't want to know.
Yeah, they can't go there. So yeah, same with doctors, as you say. So yeah, the spiritual healing helped me immensely. I still go for spiritual healing now because I find that it helps me to sort of touch base with that realm. That's the closest I can come to it, actually, is by spiritual healing, because it's a very sort of peaceful process. I mean, the nearest I can, if people haven't had spiritual healing, it's almost like Reiki healing. It's just kind of like very gentle, hands-on, but it's more powerful than that to me, because I go to the spiritualist church, and there's only a few of us there, and when the hands come onto your body, you feel that sense of the energies coming through their guides and my guides and into me, and they're not just healing the physical wounds again, they're also healing any worries or traumas you might be carrying. So yeah.
Amazing. And then what happened? How was it coming back to normal life again after having that incredible journey?
It was great at first. When I was in hospital, I was safe there. So, my mum was coming in, and it took me a week to tell them about the NDE, because I thought, oh, they're not going to get it, and I want them to get it. And my mum turned around at the end. She said, "Well, do you know what? We come in here every day, and you're glowing, and you're radiating, and you're giving out all this love to everybody. You're helping the nurses who are supposed to be helping you, So I just Sorry, what was the question again? Sorry, I
How
diverted
was
myself
it
then.
sort of integrating back to life?
Yes, yes. So sorry, yeah. So I felt safe in that place, but as soon as I came out and I got back into society, I hit rock bottom because I had to go through a legal process because it was a rail accident. So all that had to take place, and of course, the legal arena is pretty tough, And I was just filled with love and just wanted to give out love and stuff like that. And I just thought, and I realized I was back in the tough old world. So I had to learn how to adjust to that, and I did do. But I was also helped by the fact that I decided right from the off that I was going to start doing some paintings based on my experience, because I was scared at first I was going to forget all this, and I thought, right, I'm going to do a painting on this, and it's got to be a huge one. I'd never done anything like this before. And I thought it's got to be like the big biblical scenes you see in the Vatican, the big Renaissance paintings. And I thought it's got to be as dramatic as that. So I started painting. And those paintings helped me sort of therapeutically to sort of process what had happened, but also to get away from the craziness of the world. So yeah, so it was a struggle at first, yeah.
Yeah. And you were okay about telling your story? Because I kept mine to myself till recently. A mine thing happened about
Okay.
3 years ago, and I didn't speak about it because I didn't want people to judge me as a nutcase, because in society it's not a kind of normal thing. And so I learned to be quiet about it. And I found it difficult to speak about. So I'm only just beginning to talk about it now. So I'm interested to hear that you opened up quite quickly about it. Did you find it harder to be in the world after having had this experience? Like
As I say, yes.
Stuff.
I did do, yeah. I found it hard because I didn't know how I was going to fit back in again. I knew that I couldn't go back to being the person that I was before. I was, because I was so down on my luck. I was drinking heavily. I mean, I was a labourer. I was picking up manual work in London, and the way you pick up that work there is you go down to the local bar, and then you hustle the guys who run the sites and stuff, and then you just drink away your wages, and I couldn't go back to that. I had to stop drinking, and all those things didn't work anymore. So it was a struggle to readjust, but it was a struggle that was a happy one, because I wanted to move forward. I knew that I was feeling a lot more complete. Life suddenly seemed a lot more three-dimensional to me than what it did do before. And also any adversities that came my way, I wanted to tackle them head on, whereas I realized before I didn't. I just smoothed over the gaps, by going to the pub and having a drink, whereas now I wanted to deal with everything. And so, yeah, well, it was tough. The beginning months were tough, but as time went on I found it easier. Once the legal thing was all sorted, that was kind of like I could put the lid on that, then I could start to move on with my life. I was writing music. I started writing music. Again, I'd got no experience in this. I could thrash out 3 chords on an electric guitar like a lot of people, but I was inspired to write some music about my experience, and this came through via the spiritual healing, because some of the healers are clairvoyant and they give little short messages at the end, and they kept saying each week, "Oh, why am I picking up a violin across your chest?" I was going, "I have no idea." Then one of them said, "They're telling me, your guides, that you're going to write a piece of music about your near-death experience." I went, "Great." So I went home and I got this old cheap synthesizer up in the loft. I pulled it out, and all I got was that and a dictaphone tape recorder, and I started writing, and these chords came through, and I realized by now that I was channeling ideas. I wasn't doing all this alone. I was getting help from another realm, and it suddenly developed into what I thought this could be played by an orchestra. And I'd come across a friend while I was recovering who was a cello player in the local orchestra, and we met for coffee one day, and I told her about what I was up to, and she laughed. I said, "Oh, maybe we could perform it." I thought, yeah, that'd be great. So my brother gave me some software and he gave me an old computer, and he said, "Look, there you go." He says, "If you play the notes into this on that you're playing on the keyboard, it will transpose it into musical notation, because the orchestra will need to have music." So that's what I did. The orchestra agreed to play it, and they said, "We'll do it," and they said, would you speak to the local press? I said, yeah, sure. They said, just a couple of lines. So I did. And I spoke to the Cambridge Evening News, and then they said, hey, hang on a sec, you're the guy who went under the train, aren't you? And I said, yeah, because it had been on the TV, on the news and stuff. So they said, this is going on the front cover. Then the phone kept ringing. Then the BBC said, we want to come and interview you at the rehearsal. So the concert sold out 2 weeks in advance.
Wow.
So the atmosphere was just beautiful because we got this packed out sort of venue and people were all crammed up against the walls. All fire regulations were broken, but it didn't matter because the atmosphere was just tremendous. And yeah, so that was, I realized that was a great help to me as well, because I was suddenly talking more about my experience and reaching out to more and more people through two different dimensions, through my art and my music. And so I felt this was a way forward. And it's interesting what you say, you know, about you not talking about it at first, because I've come across a few people who've said the same thing. In fact, when I was in hospital in Addenbrooke's, we used to go to the physio gym, as it were, you know, and all the guys in there were like mainly amputees. And I told my story when I was there over coffee one day, and this guy came up to me and he said, mate, he said, I was chased up the M11 by the police on a stolen motorbike at 125 miles an hour and came off and survived. I was going, what? And so he said, yeah. And he said, I had what happened to you happened to me as well. I said, have you told anyone? He said, no. I said, all my mates just think I'm nuts. So I said, no, you should tell them. So whether he did or not, I don't know. But, you know.
It's interesting. People are quite skeptical. I mean, there's some of the podcasts I've done. I read the comments, and a few times people said, "Yeah, it sounds right out there. Is there any evidence?" And I'm like, you know, yes, I've got brain scans because I had brain cancer before and after, showing humongous tumor gone. And but it's interesting that people are quite skeptical and kind of, is there any evidence? And you know, I'd like to know what hospital it was, because one guy actually this week said, I'd like to research more about this and find out, is there any doctor who would speak about your records? And I just felt I was being really judged that I could be making all this up, but it kind of pushes people's buttons. And I guess I learnt, and I wanted to get out of hospital. I was also in Addenbrooke's.
Brilliant Addenbrooke's.
Brilliant Addenbrooke's. Isn't that amazing though? We're both in the same hospital with
fantastic, yeah.
How long ago was your thing?
Mine was in 2006. So we wouldn't have been there at the same time, because yours was 2 years ago, wasn't it? Yeah. But carry on,
yeah. So it's interesting how much this may be happening, that I'm writing a book about it now. So that's kind of another reason why I'm talking about it and doing lots of talks and podcasts and things about NDEs. And I'm talking to a lot of NDE authors. And I probably wouldn't be doing that if I wasn't writing a book about it. To learn more about other people's stories and to engage, you know, I'm fascinated by this thing now because it's really changed my life.
Right.
So I wonder how many other people it's happened to, and we've never heard about it, you know, just because people don't want to share.
I know, exactly, that's it. And I found that okay. I've found there's a few people who've sort of tried to sort of say, well, yeah, mate, you know, maybe, you know, this, that, and the other. And I think, you know, I mean, it doesn't matter to me. If people don't want to listen, that's fine, that's okay. If they don't want to go there, that's all right. But, you know, it made me realize that we just don't talk about death at all in this country or in Western civilization, you know, which is crazy, because we prepare for everything else in life. We prepare for birth, marriage, even our driving test, but we don't prepare for death, which is going to happen to us all. So we may as well just try and at least debate it and look at it. I'm not asking everyone to,
it's like a taboo. It's like a taboo. And people, what I found since mine is that if people say, oh, you know, so-and-so's dying, I cannot say, I'm so sorry to hear this, because I'm actually, I know they're going somewhere amazing. And
yes, exactly.
It's harmony. There's no problems there. It's just gorgeous. So I have a different take, which is quite a radical one, and doesn't always, you know, I have to kind of, again, zip it about what I think about death, because I got no fear about death now. I don't fear it at all. don't have fear actually. And certainly with death, no, I know, you know, we go to a beautiful place, and we get the theory of that when we're little, depending on how you're brought up and what paradigm and what culture and what country you're brought up in. It might have different names, but essentially there's this sort of commonality of understanding that there's somewhere that we go to when we leave this body. And it's quite it is a profound question of life, and it's one, as you said, it doesn't really get talked about.
Yeah, exactly, that's it. You know, I mean, I lost my mother a few years ago, and she was the first person to leave, you know, after I had the NDE. And yeah, of course, I missed her physically, and I mourned her, which is really important, you know, mourned her passing. But it was just great to know where she was going. I remember going into the hospital and to say goodbye to her, you know, after she passed and stuff. And I just kissed her on the forehead and I said, "Mom, I know where you're going now, and you're just going to love it there. You're just going to have the best time," you know, and she will. And I just to know that is just fantastic. And personally, I've since my book came out, I never realised I'd be talking to so many people like yourself. You know, that's how the story started spreading out. Because, in fact, my publisher said to me, "Look, you know, when the book comes out, it came out just at the beginning of the pandemic, and so just before that happened, they said, oh, you know, we'd like you to go into like some." You know, Waterstones and stuff like that, the bookshops, and just do a few talks. And I was going, "Oh no, I don't want to do that, you know, that's not me, you know," sort of thing. And so I ended up doing Zoom conversations and throughout, you know, everywhere across the world, talking to far more people, you know, just by doing this. And I felt totally comfortable with it, and it's made me feel even more sort of, you know, relaxed and open about going deeper and deeper into the whole thing about the afterlife and experiencing what is there. And I'm finding that I'm answering more questions myself as well, you know. I mean, one of the first things I did was on BBC Radio Cambridge, where I was asked to go on there because they got some guys who were doing some research into near-death experiences, and they went into Adam Brooks Hospital, and they said what they were doing was that, which is really bonkers, but they were saying that people had agreed to it if they were going in for, say, heart surgery or something like that. They signed a form to say, would it be okay if we had some cameras above, so that, and we place some photos on the floor, and if you have your near-death experience, can you tell us if you saw these photos? Do you know what I mean? It's something really basic like that kind of thing. Yeah, at least they were trying, so I can't knock it, because I look, you know, without science, I would not be sat here talking now. So I'm a big fan of science as well. But I said, yeah, I'll go on the talk. And so, you know, I went on there, and somebody turned around to me and said, you know, the same thing as you had said earlier, that, well, you know, there's no scientific proof at all for this, is there? Have you got any evidence? And I said, look, nobody has ever turned around and said, is there a scientific answer, any proof to the fact that love actually exists? And everyone goes, well, no. And they said, well, we don't question that, because we accept that love exists, that love is something that happens to us, you know, and there's no scientific equation for it. You know, there's no sort of like, oh yeah, that happens because, you know, bloody, bloody, blah. You know, it's a natural process of life circle, and just like death. And I also believe that the soul is too strong an entity just to suddenly switch off. Yes, the body stops and decays and dies and finishes, but the soul is really powerful, and it continues on, you know. So yeah,
that was one of the things that I saw. One of my let's say revelations, and I had a few in my one was and I had the cosmic star thing, just like you did.
Oh, brilliant.
I was
fantastic.
You know, I was watching this cosmos of stars and incredible. It was like a movie of universal stars everywhere, and I was shooting through. And it was cool. It was like a sort of Marvel, woo, off I go. Very liberating. And you know, who we are. What I realized, one of my revelations, was that we're all connected. You and I connected, you and I connected to the earth, to nature, to everything. There is one thing. That's what I saw. There is one thing, and it's all connected. And we have impact on whatever we do. We're impacting everything. So I've learned that, like, this person who's, one of the comments I got this week on this podcast I did, Jeff Marr, which is how I found you. One of the comments that mentioned your name, so then I checked you and followed you, said that I should be locked up and put behind bars for what I was
No
saying.
way.
They actually said that. It's like how much people get triggered, when it's not in their belief system.
Yeah.
For me to talk about this afterlife actually caused someone to say that I should be sued, I don't know what for, and I should be put behind bars for saying what I was saying.
Right.
And
Oh,
that's actually tumbled through my mind quite a lot, going, wow, I really need to be aware how much this can trigger people, to the extent that they want to have me imprisoned. It's almost like being a witch in the
exactly.
and being burnt for your beliefs, which didn't fit the norm beliefs. But so it's interesting, and I've talked to quite some very interesting people, like Raymond Moody. I think he did a quote for your book. We'll speak about your book.
That's right. Yeah.
And Eben Alexander, and these are neuroscientists, surgeons who've worked in medicine for years and years and researching. So the science is beginning to come through on this. If people can be bothered to have a look at it, there is some really good hard scientific studies going on, which is very, very good. And I'm interested about this Cambridge research you mentioned. I'll have a look for that, and I'll perhaps ask you afterwards about that, because if there's current research being done, this is great to be able to calm down these people who are clearly getting very upset with the conversation about the afterlife. So I'm already, I haven't gone out yet with my book, but I've already experienced some prejudice.
But don't be put off, because that's the world. That's the world of the internet, isn't it? That's the word,
you're
that's the
get
negative
trolls.
side of it,
Yeah, and as someone pointed out, you're making noises out there in the world, and if people are getting upset, you're getting noticed for what you're talking about. So
yes, that's very true. The positives are that
tell me about
the book. Well, the book, again, this is really crazy because I'm dyslexic. So I'd always wanted to write my story, but I thought there's no way I can do it because I'm severely dyslexic. And there's been, you talked to earlier about
something about that. Has that changed since your NDE? That issue?
No, that side, no. Sadly, that gift wasn't given to me. No, but it's interesting because I realized that I'm a lot more. I always thought that I was pretty, not that I could never read a book or understand what books are about or articulate myself even in text to friends, And in fact, two of my friends are writers, and so when I text with them, they're always laughing at me about my texting. I'll say something like, they'll text and say, "You're free to chat." I'll say, and one of my friends loves the one that I always say, "Yeah, I'll be with you in a minuetto." I can never spell minute. Even every single time I try and get it right, it still goes to minuetto, Anyway, but that's another story. But this one friend was based up in Scotland, and I hadn't spoken to her for some years, and we got chatting, and she said, "When are you going to write that story of yours?" And I said, "Well, how am I can't, I'm dyslexic." And she knew that. And she said, maybe I could help you out. I said, "That'd be great. Would you?" So she agreed to be my co-author on it, and so that's how all that. And she got right into my head. She actually said to me afterwards that she felt that she wasn't writing that book herself. She realized watching my interviews, me talking about channeling and getting ideas from the other realm. She said I was doing the same, because I know that wasn't me writing all that. So we were connected, even though we were doing this by Zoom or by phone. We weren't in the same room together.
No,
and so that all came together.
Consciousness. It's so interesting what you're saying about this. I wrote a book on creativity, the art of creativity. And before I had this, and I was writing it leading up to my hospitalization in Addenbrooke. So I actually finished the book in Addenbrooke. But I realized speaking to songwriters, lyricists, people who are really top of their game, the Paul McCartneys, Katie Tunstall, all these people, they talked about ideas dropping in and you catching them. And you're catching them in this collective consciousness. And then they disappear. David Lynch, I interviewed, he said, write down
Oh,
your
wow.
ideas, because they will disappear. And we all know
Yes.
that. You get a great, I had one last night when I was half asleep. I had an idea drop in. I was like, oh, I really hope I remember this. And I keep a notepad by, where I sleep, so I can jot down things, my mad scrawlings in the night, and then I'll wake up in the morning. What was that? Oh yeah, I would have forgotten that. Really good idea. And that happened today. So I love this concept that creative people, I'm very interested that you got this creative beam come into you for writing.
Yes.
And for drawing, painting, and for music. And you had none of that before. This is extraordinary. And like, wow. Let's acknowledge that. That's wow.
Yeah.
And so this, to me, confirms this idea that creativity, and I've always believed this anyway, that creativity is beamed down somehow in some sort of channel thing, and it drops down, and it drops down to people at the same time. Often the same ideas drop down. It depends who grabs it and runs with that ball.
Absolutely.
Do
you know what?
Fabulous.
Go on, sorry.
Yeah, go.
No, it's all right. I'm enthusiastic as with what you were saying, because I was watching, there was a series of programs about the Rolling Stones on the BBC just recently, on each individual member. And the one I loved the best was Keith Richards. He's incredible. He's an amazing guy. And he talked about how he wrote songs. He said that he would literally sit there with his guitar, and he would find something that was like the seed of an idea, but he wouldn't leave the room until he kept going around until that, as you talked about, that inspiration just came through, and it would just drop, and he'd go, that's the one, that's it, that's the hook, that's the the guitar riff that was suddenly become one of their biggest hits or whatever, so yeah. So it's amazing. So there's a certain amount of work ethic that goes in.
You've got to work hard. You've got to open the channel and then work hard and run. Keep focused. And when it doesn't work, which often happens, things don't work first time, you just got to stick with it. I watched Lady Gaga do a video yesterday. I watched it yesterday, and she said, if you work hard, you have an idea and you work hard, you will succeed. You just got to keep on. I thought, wow, Gaga, you're cool. And that's what she's done. She said, that incredible level of success is preceded by a hell of a lot of concentration, perspiration, and focus. It doesn't just happen overnight. That overnight success has taken years, decades to happen. I once talked to Paul McCartney. We both lived in Sussex, and our kids worked at the local school, and he and I would chat every morning after job. And he's good friends with David Lynch, who's a passionate meditator. He's got a David Lynch Foundation. It gets TM meditation out to the world, to at-risk groups, people who can't access this kind of thing. This is what his charity does. It provides opportunities they want anybody to be able to access it. So wonderful. And so anyway, I was talking to Paul about his songwriting and ideas and create. I think I had this idea for a creativity book, although it was not even formed really in my head at that point, although obviously something higher within me knew I was going to be writing about this. And I was asking him about songwriting, and he said when he was in India with Maharishi and the band, the Beatles, were learning TM meditation with Maharishi in Rikisha. He would wake up, grab a piece of paper, and he'd have the lyrics fully formed. They wrote 40 songs just while they were there, like the big one. And he would just write it down. He said all I had to do was write it down, because it would arrive. And he spoke about this thing of having ideas drop in, and this whole thing feels so right. Having flown around the universe, you kind of see that this thing is a big thing, and the ability for us to, with our consciousness and our human consciousness and awareness, is to be able to grab that and use it somehow. And I think your work is a brilliant example of someone who had zero connection with this thing, and now you're pumping out loads of paintings and work and music that no one, probably especially you, expected to happen.
No, never. Exactly. That's it. And the more that I actually create, the more, synchronicity starts to happen in my life. People start to cross my path, like I say, the cellist and stuff like that. And then, I mean, one of my paintings is like, I got contacted by a wonderful museum in Washington D.C. and they'd like to have one of my paintings on loan next year. It's called the Museum of the Bible, and it's a new museum, and they look amazing. It's all very sort of very modern and very connected, and they're actually want to do a piece on the afterlife next year and looking into that, which is great to think that an American sort of museum on the Bible would want to look into that. So I'm just getting that. That's one of my things I'm doing at the moment. I'm getting that all touched up and re-stretched and ready to go. That's going to be flown out. So it's just things like that are remarkable. I've thought in my wildest dreams what I had even thought a year ago that this would be happening, that one of my paintings would be loaned by a museum in America. So it's exciting. And it's, to me, it's odd because, of course, there's a massive sense of excitement, but there's no sense of ego involved in all this. It's like when the concert sold out, I didn't suddenly feel like, hey, I'm the biggest rock and roll star in town. I suddenly thought, great, more and more people are going to come to this event, and therefore they will all experience what I went through, and we can all be in this together. And it just felt like it was coming from a more pure and organic place, if you like, so it was really good. And that's kind of stayed with me. And I think that's really important, because I think if you remain in that space, that's when things start to evolve, because they're authentic, they're real.
Absolutely. I think what you're talking about here is such an important thing. This disintegration, dissolving of the ego. I started ego.
Yeah.
And that seems to be what often happens with NDEs. The ego bit of us gets either diminished or just smashed down, and humility and humbleness spring up, as well as creativity and a different view of the world. And I'm definitely more humble. I used to be celebrity PR, famous, hanging out with famous people all the time, doing really incredible stuff. And I was probably full of ego at that time, and probably a pain in the ass to be around. But, I was really like full on. And then bam, this thing happened. And I always think of it's before and after for me, before this event and post this event, completely different people. And I find it quite difficult to integrate back into life, because people knew who I was, Susie Pearl, that you're this, and I'm like, I'm not that. Whoever you thought I was, I'm nothing like that now. I might have the same name, the same face, the same kind of look, but I'm completely different. And my relationship with ego has completely changed, and see the world differently. Now I want to have different kind of conversations. I want to hang out with different kind of people, not interested in fancy bags and material stuff. Don't give a monkeys. I'm into sort of very different things. So it's been for me, integrating back into life has been the hardest part of this.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, there's certain things that just don't sort of fit anymore. Like things like before my accident, I was like a party animal. If there was a party, it was like, yes, please, or big crowds and stuff like that. I can't do all that stuff now. I go to a party, even if it's filled with people that I know well, I still struggle with it, because it just kind of seems at odds to me just to be stood in a room and getting drunk and just talking about nonsense that we don't even remember what we were talking about the next day. I'm not trying to say that I'm a very serious young man now. It's not to do with that. It's just to do that. It just doesn't fit anymore.
It's a bit of a deeper awareness about what's going on, and I'm aware of things like what I'm eating more. I find it difficult to eat. I mean, I do, eating animals or whatever. I'm just more aware of what I'm eating and what it's doing to my body. And someone gave me a big sugary donut. I'm not interested, because I think of it on a cellular level, what that sugar is going to do. And I just want to be healthy, and I just want to think good things. I want to be hanging out with people who are kind and compassionate and loving and kind and nice. And I think certainly my ability to soak up bullshit and
Yes.
just, you know, rub things that are very unimportant, let's say, to me. I'm less able to be tolerant. Well, I can be tolerant, but I don't want to hang out and at that party thing and talk.
Yeah, you don't want to be in a sort of unconscious sort of crowd and that kind of thing. You want to be where people are conscious, don't you? And then they're talking, and if you find if I find somebody at that party that we're having a conversation is on a conscious level, I'm happy then. And I'm quite happy to be there. You know, it's great.
And that person's going to be nailed to the wall because you wanted to talk to them and not have to sort of circle around and go, hi, how are you?
Yeah, exactly.
How do people get hold of you, Dave? How do people get your book and see your pictures and beautiful paintings and
thank you
your music?
Well, I guess the main port of call is to go to the website, which is called shineonthestory.com, and then you can stream the actual symphony, the first symphony, for free on there, and you can hear that, and you can see some of my paintings. But if you follow me on social media, if you're interested, then I've got an Instagram account and then a YouTube and a Facebook. Then you can see all new ones that are going up there. I'm working on a whole load of new paintings and some new music right now. So that's where I'm kind of at in the work sort of shop, as it were. So there'll be lots of new stuff coming out soon. So do follow me there.
And
but the book itself.
Oh, you're gone. Just before we talk about the book, I had a look on your YouTube and saw a lovely film about nature and about things we can do to reduce stress and angst, which is a big old deal right now because the world is going through a lot of challenge and people are going through a lot of challenge. So check out this lovely video that David's done on YouTube. What's it called?
It's called Dealing with Current World Energies.
Oh, who doesn't want to know about that? So check it out and learn, like, nature is it. Basically, that's what I learned.
That's exactly. Get as close as you can to nature.
Connect with nature, however you do. And the thing I really liked in the video, you said even like a plant pot, get a plant. And actually, after I did that video, I thought I'm going to nip out and get a nice orchid for my desk today because actually I just want to stare at beautiful flowers. I've got flowers outside, of course, but I'm also going to have one right where I'm sitting every day to remind me. That's going to be, every time I look at it, it's going to remind me, girl, you know, you are part of this phenomenal thing called nature.
And
exactly,
that's it.
Yeah. And your book.
The book is called Shine On, and you can get that through Amazon, basically, wherever you are in the world. You know, it's available on Amazon. That's probably the best port of call, just to go and get it there. So,
I've really enjoyed our chat. Thank you.
Me too. Yeah.
Really fun.
Likewise. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
It's been really good to connect. Well, thank you. Thanks for having me along. And it's been really good to chat with you.
Yeah. And I hope that people listening will have I'm sure you will have a deeper insight into what a near-death experience is all about from two people who've had one, and learn some of the things that we've been lucky enough to see on this crazy journey. Out of our bodies and coming back. It's immense, so we're really happy to share it. So thank you for listening.
And it's waiting for us all, isn't it? It's something we're all going to experience at some point.
We can have good lives. We really can. It's getting a little more cosmic. So thank you, David.
Thank you.
All good wishes for your next step. Stay in touch.
And you too with your book.
Thank you.